So, I know it's probably been a long day for all of you. I'm going to try to stay within the 15 minutes that has been allocated, but I need a little background. How many of you have heard of employer support of the Guard and Reserve? Okay, there's a few of you, so maybe it is worthwhile being here. What states do you represent? Alaska, Montana?
Alaska, Washington, Idaho, and I think a little bit of Oregon.
Okay. Every state has an employer support of the Guard and Reserve committee. I would recommend that if you haven't done it, that you reach out to the ESGR folks in your state and use them as a resource for you. I'll talk a little bit about who we are in ESGR, and then I want to take a few minutes to talk about a federal law, the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, which is the job protection law for people serving in the Guard and Reserve. Let me ask another question. How many of you have heard of USERRA? Okay. How many of you are active duty recruiters? See, that's the answer. But you're going to learn today that USERRA also applies to soldiers that you recruit for active duty. So it's important for you to at least have an understanding. And that's what I want to leave you with today, really, is knowing a little bit about ESGR and who we are and the resources we can provide. And secondly, that there is a law that protects the jobs of people serving in the military and how you access that, that information. I came unprepared today for the number, but I'm going to blame it on the Army Reserve, because you folks had a big yellow ribbon event over in Bellevue this weekend. There were about 600 soldiers and pretty much wiped out our supply of information. So, but what I'm going to hand out as far as they go are wallet cards that we give to reservists that give a brief summary of ESGR and USERRA. You're here tomorrow, right? I'll round up enough of these wallet cards so that they can be distributed tomorrow, so you can all at least take one home and have it for a resource. But we'll see how far those go. All right, ESGR, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. Nobody, I don't think there's a person other than myself in the room that was involved in an activity that ended in 1972. Any idea what that is? No. Who said the draft? The draft ended. When the draft ended, Congress and the military and the business community realized that if we are going to go to an all-volunteer military, there needs to be some working program between employers and the military. And as a result of that, employer support of the Guard and Reserve was created to promote cooperation between the business community and people who have chosen to voluntarily serve in the military. So since that time, we've been out there trying to educate employers about their responsibilities under USERRA and working with military folks to make sure they understand their rights and their responsibilities. So we have four programs. One is employer outreach, and that's where we're trying to reach into the business communities to make sure that and it's primarily the frontline supervisors that we have a problem with, but to make sure employers understand what they need to do. We have the military outreach. I mentioned how we try to brief service members on an annual basis about their USERRA responsibilities. We have an ombudsman program. When problems do arise, we provide informal mediation between the employer and the service member to try to resolve that problem at the lowest level. Once it gets, if we aren't able to resolve it, and we resolve about 60% of cases, then the Department of Labor takes over, and it can, in an extreme case, go up to the U.S. Attorney's Office and lawsuits filed against employers. And then our fourth program is a hiring initiative. Any of you heard about the e-benefits program in the Veterans Administration? Okay, one head nodded. We used to have a program called Heroes to Hired, and it was a military, actually everybody really except the Army Reserve, where we linked up potential employers with service members to try to match those job skills and get people serving in the Guard and Reserve hired. All of those programs, ours, and there were kind of a bunch of stovepipes of hiring programs, all got pulled into the e-benefits program as a way to try to consolidate into one place where employers would go to hire military folks. So e-benefits is out there, and in fact I'll bring some information on that tomorrow. So really those are our four programs. As part of our employer outreach program, we have an awards program. It starts at what's called the Patriot Award level, where a service member could nominate their employer for an award. It's a really nicely framed, very patriotic looking document, and it's their way of saying thank you, boss, for taking care of me. And then our awards climb from there up to, and I'm guessing all of you in your military publications somewhere have seen information about nominating your boss for the Freedom Award, the Secretary of Defense Freedom Award. And that's the highest level of Department of Defense award that can be presented. In our general area here in the Northwest, Microsoft has been a Freedom Award winner, Starbucks, the Port of Seattle, Boeing won it a number of years ago, but it's a very prestigious award. So, in a nutshell, that's who we are, ESP. Now, the real basis for our existence, the foundation of our existence is the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. Created in 1990, actually it wasn't created, it was updated in 1994 from the old Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act. But USERRA is probably the most comprehensive civil rights act that's been legislatively corrected, legislatively written. So what it is it protects people serving in the military from job discrimination. So, and that means in the hiring, you can't be discriminated against for joining the military. You can't be discriminated against if you file, for instance, an ombudsman complaint that you're concerned about how you're treated. You get your job back when you return from duty. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's pretty much an absolute. And that applies to all people clearly serving in the Guard and Reserve. Now, where it applies to you folks and where we could really use your help as active duty recruiters is, and this happens, I think, more frequently than we give credit to. You recruit a young man or a young woman. They're working at some ma and pa store. That could be anywhere that they're working. And the boss says, "What? You joined the Army Reserve? You're going off to basic training? You're fired. You're out of here." And that is a violation of USERRA. You can't discriminate against that person. And what we want you to do as recruiters is to know that that's a violation. Step in, help that recruit, go talk to that store owner, explain to them the basics of USERRA, or call your local ESTR person and let them know so that we can step in, because that young man or young woman going off to basic training needs to know that if they come back, that job is going to be there. And quite often it's ignorance on the part of the employer, not knowing what his or her responsibilities are. If you have a person who goes off to basic training, gets hurt, something happens, and they're released from the military back to their home unit, they're covered. They get their job back. So it is a comprehensive law. Let me, where did all of those cards go? Is there one down here? So, an issue that we sometimes face for reservists is whether they go off for their 2 weeks of annual training, or they go off for basic training, or they're deployed for a year. There's a timetable that they have to go back to work. So, for instance, somebody going off to their basic training, they're gone for 60 to 90 days. Once they get released from active duty, they've got 14 days to reacquaint themselves with their civilian world before they go back to their job. The employer cannot say, "You've got to come back. You've got off the plane yesterday, get back to work today." That service member has to have that time to reacquaint.
Does that go both ways? Does the individual within 14 days has to go back to the employer and say, "I'm here, I'm ready to go"?
Well,
and if they don't, the
yes.
employers.
Yes. And really, USERRA is about communication. Service member, we always recommend that the service member, even before with the communications we have today, send an email to the boss right before you're, being released. Say, I'm being released, but I need 10 days or 14 days, and I plan on being back to work this date. I just had a situation with a young soldier that got off of basic training, and I think it isn't real clear, but I think he told his boss, "I'm getting released from active duty in North Carolina this day, and I'll be back the next day." His boss took that to believe that he'll be back to work, not just back in the area. Well, he got back and he needed some time after basic training to reorient, and his boss wrote him a very scathing letter about why weren't you at work on these 3 days that I had you scheduled. Well, he didn't know he was scheduled. The employer really didn't know that he wasn't coming back. It was a failure on both sides to communicate. But the employer is just going to have to suck it up, and he may be a little grumpy to that young soldier initially, but it's a case where communication could have been a lot better, but USERRA protects that soldier's right to go back to work. So, how am I doing for time, Colonel?
I think we have to wrap up in a couple minutes.
Okay, so I will drop more of these cards off tomorrow. I would ask each of you, there's a 1-800 number here. If you do have any questions, the 1-800 number is a great number to call. Even if you don't have a case, if you just want to learn something, the 1-800 number is a good resource. Our website at esgr.mil is an excellent place to look for resources. There's information for service members, there's information for employers, and I would recommend you look at it, but do reach out to the committee folks in your state. If you go to that esgr.mil, there's a map. You can click on your state. It'll tell you who the people are at the state headquarters for each of the states, and reach out and make them a resource for you. And we have people who, I mean myself, we have people all around the state that are happy to come out to your recruiting station and go through in much more detail USERRA, what ESGR can do, and we want to be a resource for you. So with that, I'll end, and
I'm going to usurp another 2 minutes off this. So somebody tell me, why did we ask Mr. Larry Kirchner to come up here and talk about ESGR?
Combat multiplier, talking about future soldiers, about protection of our future soldiers, right?
Better information for our applicants.
Better information for our applicants, right? Our reservists.
Get rid of misnomers.
What else?
Sir, I have a letter in my office saying that, if someone's worried that they're going to lose employment or something like that, it's, on our letterhead, we give it to them, and it has everything that he's been saying.
Yep.
And it says, you're, under the penalty of the, USAR law, that you cannot fire this person. We actually have them give that to their employer before they complete basic training or whatever.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. What else?
I did that same thing for work. Like if they say, oh, I can't go to the floor on Thursday, I have to work. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Right here.
I just have a
You're going down for the termination of military fitness.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, please.
They can help with parents too, sir. If you have a high school senior who wants to go to the reserve and the parents want, reassurances, it can help smooth that transition over.
Brilliant. What else? So we covered down a lot of the stuff and precisely the things that Mr. Larry Kirchner has talked about over here, right? What other tools do we have in our kit bags up front to present to soldiers who are interested in going to the reserve components that are going to be value added as something that's going to be a sphere of influence or enticing an individual to want to go into the reserve component? What else do we have?
I know PACE program.
PACE program. There's one right there, right?
I know for the PACE program, when they join the reserve, as soon as they get back from AIT, they get a job interview.
Okay.
Versus that RA has to wait until they get done with their first enlistment.
What else do we have besides PACE? Well, yeah, we just talked about e-benefits over here, right? So, CONAP, right? Folks who want to go to school. What else do we have? Okay, hey, let's talk about e-benefits over here real quick, because we talked about the consolidation of the federal, basically, databases that were actually out there from going from what used to exist in their Heroes to Hire, the H2H program, now being part of e-benefits. Over here in the state of Washington, and those that are going to be attending the RPC, and I think Mr. Larry Kirchner, either Mr. Kirchner or Mr. Patterson is going to be participating in our RPC that's going to be on the 23rd of January as well. And during that time frame, We'll have both ESGR speak, and then we'll also have the Washington VA talk. So we have this e-benefits addable up here that for folks that need to be gainfully employed, hey, the reserve provides them the opportunity to come in, get a DD-214, become a veteran, and gain full-time employment, which is awesomeness, right? Now you also have, and you know, granted, hey, we're about the median and unemployment. The state of Washington's probably about, what, 5.5%, maybe down to 5.4. We're about spot on what the United States currently represents. But then you go to pockets like Seattle, and Seattle is about a 4.1, right? So that's a tough road to hoe down there. So, but nonetheless, there are folks out there that need to be gainfully employed. They become veterans, get their DD-214s, they can get full-time employment via e-benefits. The VA in the state of Washington also has their own program that falls under the purview of the Washington State Military Transition Council. We're going to have them talk in the RPC as well, so those in the I-5 corridor are going to get the opportunity to hear what they have there as well to offer. It is another program that we can take advantage of to say, look, you become a reservist, you get full-time employment, you have all of these programs at your disposal to try to get you linked in with all these corporations, to include pays, to get you into corporate America and perhaps Fortune 500 companies like Amazon. Amazon's the only one that's the big name one over here. Trust me, we've been working to try to get Microsoft, trying to get Boeing, to try to get you know, some of the other animals, the big name animals out here. Even got a chance to talk to the Costco VP recently for human resources, but they don't necessarily fit the mold to go into pays, and so there's always a little bit of pushback. And Microsoft is just too decentralized to actually commit, right? So we're trying, and we'll continue to try to get some pay stuff. And Sergeant Ray did a phenomenal job of getting a pays partner recently with the correction facility of the state of Washington. But okay, these are tools in the kit bag. These are things that will actually, you can bring these tools to bear to talk to folks and say, the reserve is a great fit for you, we'll get you full-time employment, and ESGR has a big animal involved in this thing. So that's why we wanted to get Mr. Kirchner out here. And so we're looking forward to having you come out for the RPC in January as well, sir. And thank you very much for your time.
All right.